Okay, so adorable, right? Like she was so committed to it is 1, 2, 3, 5. And the dad, I don't know if you heard it because it was right after we got the audio figured out. He's like, I teach this every day. So he's an educator and he was trying to reteach it, but it wasn't working until her mom came in and had her do it in a completely different way. So whatever had happened previously in this adorable little girl's education with number sense, something was built in there that wasn't being determined through the reteaching process. And so kind of we want to be able to get into, well, what is the logic of our learner? What is the pre-existing understanding that is causing this misconception or this misunderstanding to prevail over time? So adorable example. I hope you enjoyed it. She's super cute. Okay, so to continue with the analogy, we're going to look at building a house. And so as teachers, our curriculum, our standards, they provide a blueprint for us to build this beautiful mathematical house. And as the architects of this, as with any standards-based architect, the threshold for this construction is a 1/4 inch for every 8 feet, meaning that there can only be a 1/4 inch of play for every 8 feet of wall. Because if there's more than that, then walls will be off and it will kind of domino effect through the rest of the house. So as math teachers, we put in all these fine details. We make sure that we tell our students about all these fine ins and outs of a concept. We make amazing notes. We're all very proud of our notes. And we feel like we're doing everything awesome because it feels awesome and looks great. But in our classrooms, we often think that this is enough, but the students, and at least one or a handful of students in any given math class, is simply in survival mode. They are trying to do their best to understand the mathematics that are being presented to them, and they are taking notes. They might be taking only the high points of the notes. They might not be taking any notes at all because it's just too overwhelming. And as a result, while we as a math teacher feel like we've built this amazing house, the student's like, yeah, I built a house. Sure. Is it a house? I think it's a house. Is that what it is? Somebody tell me. Help me out. And so, even for students that might be seemingly clicking on all levels with us, they might have a house in this picture where it's leaning to the left. If you look at this house, it's leaning slightly, but the door itself is square. And so you can walk into this house. It's functional. It works. It's shelter. But over time, this house is going to have problems. And so, how many of our students in elementary and middle school, they seem to be clicking on all cylinders, building the concept, everything seemed to be fine, but there was that one thing that wasn't quite there. And then when we get to high school and we add another layer onto that, we're in the situation where we're like, no, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And the student's like, no, it's 1, 2, 3, 5. And so we need to be able to hear our student voices and to try and figure out what is that prior learning. So the logic of the learner is essentially all those things that have happened before they're in our class. How do the mistakes take place in terms of the student thinking related to a concept? What are the misconceptions? How do they show up? Essentially that cognitive constructivism of an idea, a mathematical idea over time. Whereas we as teachers tend to live in the logic of discipline. How do our standards build out over the years? How is it that the lesson that I'm teaching in middle school about lines is connected to fractional understanding in elementary school? How is it that ratio and proportions build into that? And then as a high school teacher, how is it that that linear relationship then builds out into statistics? Like there's this whole flow of understanding that happened before that student was in my class in high school that I know all the math behind it, but that logic of discipline is different from the logic of learner. And so we're going to look at the Arizona learning progressions that were developed to kind of get an idea as to what those kind of logic of disciplines look like. Okay, so we're going to dive into this. I've provided a link for you elsewhere so you can see them yourself. They are somewhat verbose, the Arizona Learning Progressions, which is here twice on the slide. I apologize. You're going to skim it once you find it. You're going to skim it, and then you can see in here I highlighted some of the content from these progressions that attend to some of the prior learning students would have with respect to a concept. So this one is seeing structure and expressions in algebraic high school learning progression. And so we see a little bit that it addresses some of the ideas that they've seen in elementary school and middle school, and then they expand on that a little bit more at the bottom.